For centuries, the city of Vientiane has survived here, along the banks of the Mekong River, at the heart of the Lao territories in peninsular Southeast Asia. Flowing for over 2,600 miles from China, down through Burma, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, and finally draining to the sea from Vietnam, the Mekong River system provides food, water, and transportation routes for millions of people living on or near its banks, and those of its many tributaries. For Vientiane, the river is life. Its waters sustain agriculture, fish, and other wildlife for human consumption. Boats are a constant presence on its waters, bringing people and trade goods to and from the city. Thailand, with its abundance of material wealth compared to impoverished Laos, lies only a short boat ride across the Mekong. Only recently has the Mekong been bridged to allow a quick trip to Thailand without close contact with the river's water. Still, much of the cross-border traffic utilizes small boats as in times past. Throughout its long history, Vientiane has been at times nothing more than a small rural village, but it has more commonly been the largest Laos city and the administrative capital of a long and varied series of political entities. At one time it sat at the center of the large and powerful kingdom of Lan Sang. At the end of the 1800s, the French established Vientiane as the principal Laos city under their 60-year-long protectorate. It then became the administrative capital of the independent kingdom of Laos, ruled by a constitutional monarchy. During that time, American dollars and ideas flooded the city in an attempt to bolster the Royal Lao government against the growing communist insurgency. The jovial atmosphere of the city belied the reality in the rest of the country, where the royal government was quickly losing control. By 1975, the free flow of U.S. money and influence had ended. 3 decades of civil war, encouraged by the international superpowers, came to a close, as the communist revolutionaries claimed victory and set up their government in the city. Currently, Vientiane is attempting to become a truly urban center in an evolving nation seeking for direction in a post-communist world. The city has been razed to the ground, depopulated, and occupied several times in the past by foreign armies. Each time disaster struck, the city experienced a rebirth, with bright hopes for the future. Its latest incarnation, what we see here today, carries with it a little piece of each of its many past lives. This mix of royal extravagance, French elegance, communist prudence, and good country living has shaped Vientiane into a city with a little something for everyone. The exact origins of Vientiane as a city are lost in history. Before coming under Lao control, the area was ruled for centuries by a succession of Mon kingdoms based out of what is now Thailand to the west, and also by Khmer kingdoms situated in present-day Cambodia to the south. Few remains of those times, or even the early Lao period, exist in the city now, aside from some ancient boundary markers on display at museums, or the remains of an old structure on the grounds of a temple not far from the city center. Vientiane was well established as a Lao city by the time of the founding of the Kingdom of Lan Sang in the mid-1300s. Legend has it that after sweeping up from the south with the aid of a small Khmer army and a growing number of conscripts, the founder of Lan Sang, Zhao Fangum, actually held his first major victory celebration in Vientiane in preparation for his formal coronation held later in Luang Prabang, his hometown and royal capital. As for determined royal patronage in Vientiane itself, we must look to the middle of the 16th century during the reign of Zhao Saiseta. The statue here in front of Tat Luang pays homage to this king who is one of the most revered leaders in Lao history. He established Vientiane as a great religious center, and in 1560 he even moved the royal capital of Lan Sang from Luang Prabang in the north downriver to Vientiane. Saiseta is credited with building many of the most famous religious structures in the city through his patronage of the Lao Buddhist order. Aside from being a fervent supporter of the Buddhist order, Saiseta was an adept warrior. The period of Jiao Seta's rule remains one of the high points in Lao history, and during this time Vientiane made grand steps towards becoming the principal city of the Lao people. For several centuries, Vientiane remained a powerful political and religious center. Lansang and Vientiane enjoyed their golden age under the rule of Jiao Sulinyavongsa, a lengthy reign that endured for over 50 years, from the 1640s to the 1690s. During this time, the first Europeans arrived in Lansang, a Dutch merchant and an Italian missionary. The wealth and architecture of Vientiane greatly impressed the foreigners. Their accounts describe Sulinyavongsa as a powerful king, living in a lavish palace, surrounded by a large entourage, while the general population lived a far humbler existence. However strong it was during Sulinyavongsa's reign, the loose system of alliances that held Lansang together would not last into the modern era. Soon after Sulinyavongsa's death, the kingdom declined and split apart. Then Vientiane entered its darkest historical period, lasting for over a century, from the late 1700s through to the end of the 1800s. Siamese armies looted and destroyed the city twice during this time, looking to exert control over the weakened Lao territories. Forcibly depopulated and left in ruins, Vientiane died and was soon swallowed by the forest. Only one temple remained intact. In the mid-1800s, European explorers in the area describe a mostly empty skeleton of what they could only imagine must have once been a great city. From 1893 to 1954, Vientiane came under French control as they expanded their Indo-Chinese territories out from their base in Vietnam. The city slowly regained some of its former glory as the administrative capital of the area in Indochina that came to be known as Laos. The city's borders and population steadily expanded through this period, and several of its great structures of old came to life once again. It was during this Renaissance that many of the city's temples once again took shape. Temples and other religious structures in Vientiane often play a dual role. Besides being popular tourist stops, they are operative institutions for the city's mainly Buddhist population. They are literally sanctuaries from the outside world, educational institutions for young boys from all over Laos, and functional works of art. Their multiple personalities do not always coexist without conflict. However, in general, within their walls the atmosphere is tranquil and relaxing. The temples of Vientiane draw a substantial number of foreign tourists each year, hailing mostly from neighboring Asian countries, but also many from Europe, the United States, and Australia. So many foreigners come each year that the central section of town has adapted, sometimes radically, to accommodate the visitors. Guest houses and hotels, cafes and restaurants, and internet shops are filling in every available space within the temple district. The government eagerly welcomes the tourists and their money, as do the local businesses that depend on them. The reasons for coming to Vientiane are varied. Many are just passing through and are here almost accidentally. Recently, 2 young Slovakian girls stopped a passerby one afternoon, soon after arriving in town, to ask what there was to see in Vientiane. They patiently listened to a brief description of a few famous landmarks and temples, only to find out that the tourist sites were already closed for the day. Seeming not the least bit disappointed at their poor timing, the girls immediately jumped to Plan B and asked where they could go for some good, inexpensive food. Then they ended their conversation and wandered off down the street. For them, the destination was simply not as important as the adventures encountered along the way. The Tat Luang, or Great Stupa, is perhaps the best known religious structure in all of Laos, and is often used as a symbol of the nation. Originally constructed on orders from Jiao Seta in the 1560s over the remains of a much older stupa of unknown origins, the majestic Tat Luang dominated the 4 surrounding temples on its grounds. Only 2 of the temples and the stupa were rebuilt during the French period, after their partial destruction during the city's years of abandonment. In the 1860s, an artist on a French expedition captured the look of the Great Stupa just before it was pillaged and further damaged by a group of marauding Chinese bandits searching for possible hidden treasures within. This image became an important piece of the puzzle during later restorations. An initial and wholly unsatisfactory restoration was first attempted in 1900, resulting in a form that met with little appreciation among the population. A more successful undertaking using the early French image as a guide followed from 1929 to 1935. The stupa has been painted with gold paint several times in the past century to maintain the look of its majestic form jutting up into the sky over the surrounding city below, though it is no longer covered in real gold leaf as it had once been during earlier times. For as long as people can remember, Vientiane Island has dominated the view of the Mekong from Vientiane's riverfront, constantly contracting and expanding with the ever-changing flow of the river. The island survived the historical currents of Vientiane's growth relatively unchanged. Then, quite suddenly and with little forewarning, massive amounts of earth and sand were excavated, piled up and shaped, completely reshaping the island. Within a mere 10 months' time, an immense hotel loomed above, creating a singular pillar of modern development jutting into a previously non-existent skyline along the riverfront. The speed with which the project proceeded has led some residents to jokingly lay wagers on how long it will take the earth beneath to settle and bring the whole thing tumbling down. Just how the project made it so quickly through the approval process may remain a mystery for some time, but the large sums of foreign money backing the venture were certain to have helped. Also aiding the palace's construction was the desire of the government to impress foreign visitors and investors in town for the 10th ASEAN Summit held at the hotel very soon after its completion. The building of Vientiane Palace and the stir it created is not entirely without historical precedent in Vientiane. Another looming landmark, the Patu Sai, a name often translated as Victory Arch or Gate, initially had its own detractors, and rumors about oddities in the process of its construction still linger today. The Patu Sai is also commonly called by its pre-1995 name, Anu Sabali, simply meaning the monument. It was initially built in the late 1960s as a memorial to those who died fighting for the Royal Lao government during the then ongoing civil war. The current regime, enemy of the Royal Lao government and victor in that war, unsuccessfully attempted to mute the original meaning of the monument after 1975. Even the construction of its own competing, yet much smaller monument for fallen soldiers could not detract from the significance of the massive edifice rising defiantly above the surrounding neighborhoods. Over time, the Patu Sai has outlasted any attempts to call its existence into question, and it is now revered as another symbol of the nation. The stir created by Vientiane Palace brings to mind what many guidebooks and other descriptions of the city often jokingly mention as the controversy over the Patu Sai's construction. In the much-repeated story, the monument acquires the title of vertical runway due to the rumors that cement supplied by the United States to complete construction of the new airport's runway was actually diverted and used to finish the monument when its own supply of cement ran short. And so we are left to wonder at the end what the future holds for Vientiane as it leads the rest of the country into its next incarnation. Vientiane's historic symbols weave a complex tale for those trying to understand the city through them. Are its temples relics of the past, best preserved in state for foreign tourists to enjoy? Or are they symbols of the future for young boys from the countryside, with no other access to good education? Is this riverside hotel a looming eyesore, or simply a sign of a much brighter road ahead? Should the country stay the course, or initiate change leading to an unforeseeable destination? However one chooses to answer those questions, the fact remains that these symbols still stand as bastions of culture, with much to reveal for those interested in listening.